All right, so I said I wanted to change it up a little bit and get away from all that like sexual stuff that we were talking about. And what I want to talk about today is some things that I feel that when I think about the things that are holding me back, these always seem present. They're not even necessarily holding me back, but I think about what are the things that influence the way I behave and like some of the actions I take and how I am critical of myself. These tend to pop up, and I don't have a good way of overcoming those things. And those two things are guilt and shame, and I think they work in different ways, but they end up feeling the same. And they end up feeling like just like a vest to carry around, just with extra weight. And yeah, I think although they're two different problems, I guess I could say, I feel like those are things that they keep me in like a frozen state, where I feel like I should do something about something, but I don't, because I'm afraid to talk about it with someone. And so I guess I don't have a good way of bringing these two things outside of myself, and I don't know how to put them in the external world and like really find ways to tackle them. So a lot of times these end up being things that I deal with on my own, because I think one thing with the shame, it's this feeling of embarrassment for not knowing how to do something, and whereas guilt, it's more like this feeling of having capability but not having ability. And so it's like feeling like I have the tools to like go out and do something about something that's bothering me, but I don't ever actually get off my ass. And so then there's kind of the guilt, is like never actually getting started to make a difference on something that I do want to make a difference on. And so maybe a good entry point to this is to start off by talking about something that I think brings me shame, or has brought me shame. I don't know. I would say I'm not like the most social person out there. I'm fine with that, but at times I do feel like it's a weakness, and there have been places where I have seen that it's a weakness for me, and have been doing a lot of things, not necessarily to make myself more social, but to build up that social skill set. And I don't know if it's just that I'm a quiet person, or that I like just get too nervous in this situations. I think I've felt it be just more like an innate thing with me. I've gotten better at talking to people, and through a lot of different things that I've been doing, I got to a point where I kind of forgot that social situations would bring me a lot of anxiety. But for big groups of people, like it was something I didn't really enjoy. But that's just kind of how you socialize. I mean, especially in college, that was always right. That's kind of what you wanted to do. That was like the thing to do. You wanted to go to a party. You wanted to go be around a bunch of people. And that overwhelmed me a lot in college. I was in a frat, and those frat parties were always a little too much for me. But I think there was a couple things going on there. One, it was that just way too many people for me. I feel like like the good size for me is like 4 to 6 people. Anything more than that becomes a little bit too much for me. And then I feel like that's when you kind of get like subdivisions within those group of people. And then in either group, sometimes it feels like, yeah, with either group, I'm just kind of in the background. I'm not really part of the conversation. But so that was one thing that was happening back then. It was just like very, very large groups of people, very loud music. And then the other thing is just like the type of people that were there at the party, which as I come to reflect on now, I think were just people that I couldn't really connect with. But at that time didn't feel that way. It didn't necessarily feel like I didn't see, maybe I didn't think so much about like who people were. I had that concept of already of being other, because being someone who grew up in East LA, I think that you get taught a lot about that. And I think I've talked about this before, where like my high school teachers very much about like always, or about emphasizing the point about oppression, kind of how we were people that have faced oppression. And from that, one thing that I had gotten was this feeling of other or distinction from other people. And so I had that going in, and I mean, the frat I was in was essentially an Asian fraternity. And I think at that time, the culture was still new for me, where I was still learning. There was still some learning to do about the people from that culture, about their upbringing. So there was this novelty to it, where I think at that time, I was still, probably even if I wasn't getting along with these people, and I don't think it was that serious then, it wasn't really, I wasn't trying to align to some greater sense of my identity as an individual, but as part of a larger group. But yeah, I think that was the other thing, is like the people I was talking to probably just weren't people that I was going to get along in the long run. And I do think that is true, because that was graduated 2018. So that's about 8 to 10 years removed from like those people being the big group of social interaction that I was having on a daily basis. And back then, I think, we got along, we talked, but none of those relations really held strong over time. So I think it was just a matter of convenience in those relationships. Yeah, so those were two things I think back then that I kind of always knew about myself, or that was something that I've known about myself, that I don't like big groups of people. So the point that I'm trying to get at is, I also was very shy as a kid, because I think a lot of social situations did make me nervous at times. I think I got very self-conscious. And so I just kind of stopped interacting with people in the same way that I used to as a kid. I think as a kid, I used to be much more outgoing, kind of much more dominant in some of my interactions with people around me. And that stopped. And so I got to the point in my life where now I felt like enough shit had come into place where, all right, now I'm looking for a relationship. And prior to that, it wasn't something that felt realistic to grasp for. I mean, having grown up in poverty, I think that was a mental block for me, is like feeling like I need to have some sort of financial stability if I want to have a girlfriend. But I also, from that lack of self-confidence, I also didn't think of myself as an interesting person. And so I didn't think I really would garner the attention and hold the attention from someone. But eventually things fell into place where either those weren't things I believed, or they weren't hurdles anymore. And so I started to be more serious about my desire to find someone to be in a relationship with, but I was lacking the skills to, like converse with someone more naturally, and I didn't really know what to do, honestly. Yeah, like it was something that I didn't talk to anyone about, because I did honestly like feel some shame about, like, what do you mean you don't know how to go talk to a girl when, all my friends, or when my friends from high school like make it sound easy, like make it sound like you just go up to someone and you just start talking to them. But like, there's just way too many steps in my head for that to like actually happen. And then even friends here, just like them seemingly having success on dating apps, and myself not so much. And so I didn't really know what to do, like how to start getting success and like getting just like having better conversations that would hopefully lead to dates. And like even dating apps for a while was like something that felt like shameful to do, because like there definitely feels like this sense of desperation, especially early on, because I was desperate. I wasn't meeting anyone, and so I think there was this shame for me to even get on that, as well as just like some embarrassment or just like some feeling of it felt a bit invasive, and it felt weird to put myself out there in the public, where I have not really been someone who does social media and like shares things about my life, outside of just like talking to people in person. So that felt a little odd to do at the beginning. Eventually now I think about it more as just like, well, I mean, this is just kind of like it could be, if I'm on them, it could just be a supplement of, just maybe making some more connections here and there, in addition to what I'm doing in the real world, going out salsa dancing, talking to people there, and just whatever other type of social things that I'm trying to do to talk to people. And so I didn't have and so I needed to do something. And I think around this time too, like I started going on YouTube more, or maybe this is the reason that I started going on YouTube more. But there were, I've listened to like a lot of the self-help type podcast in trying to just like gain more perspectives and kind of find things that work for me, or to like, I like hearing stories, and I think when you hear someone else's stories, I think they can put things in a way that I can understand, like they find the words that I have a hard time finding sometimes. And so that's why I like listening to that sort of stuff. And so I think when I was going on YouTube, sometimes it was to like watch those things. And so similar type of stuff started popping up. And what I saw a couple of times was like, like how to talk to girls. I saw a lot of those videos popping up, but I was like, dude, nah, I'm not going to watch that stuff. Like it's not that bad, right? Like I'm not like, and then one day I was just like, I mean, like, fuck it. This is like, it's a skill, and I need someone to teach me the skill. So if there's someone out there that has been doing it and can teach it to me, then like, let me try to learn. And so there was a couple dudes I was watching, and honestly, I do think it helped just to get me into the mindset of like, all right, this is something that I can actually go out and do if I want to do. And so I started going out and just cold approaching girls, mostly through like when I was just doing salsa, but then even sometimes just, I mean, cause I also just like want to be outside, and, wasn't always salsa. Sometimes it was just like going out to bars, like looking, like exploring the city too, and was trying to like talk to people wherever I could. And, and there was some success, but it's it definitely feels embarrassing to say that, I had to go on YouTube to learn how to talk to girls, because the other side I hear is like, oh, that should just like be an instinctual thing, right? Oh, like just talk to them like it's anyone. But it's not, right? It's not, because that's not how it is in my brain. If it was in my brain that I could talk to girls the same ways that I talk to my friends, then yeah, of course, then I wouldn't be having to look for a way to do that. But for me, it's my brain does create this distinction of when I'm talking to girls, because I'm trying to, like, ultimately I find them attractive, and a lot of times that's why I'm trying to talk to girls, which I know is just kind of like there are some issues there where I fully agree. I shouldn't only be talking to women that I find attractive because I'm trying to have sex with them or hoping to have sex with them. There's definitely everyone you could probably have a lot of interesting conversations with a lot of people, but if sex isn't there on the table, to my mind, it does kind of feel like I'm putting in effort into something where I know there's not a chance of me getting what I want. And so I started watching those videos, but I did eventually, from the beginning, there were things of the way they presented views on dating and approaching that I didn't like, but I knew there were still things I could pull out of it and make them work for me. And also, as I started to like watch a couple different channels, I did start to see a similar template and almost started to feel like this was kind of part of like just like a scheme. Like, and I don't know if this is true, but as I started seeing these guys present information in the same format, I was like, oh, this kind of seems like this is just one of those weird grifter side hustles where this could be like part of one of those like Andrew Tate type things where it's like, oh, they like these guys take his course, and part of his course he's telling them, hey, create a channel where you're telling people all these techniques that I taught you. And that's kind of what I saw propagating through this like little scene that I was checking out on YouTube. And so that's also why I was taking a lot of things with a grain of salt, because I wasn't, wasn't convinced that these people were like fully in it. It did just kind of feel like a grift. There was always this like, oh, if you want to learn more, take my course. And what, the places that I had where I didn't agree with how they presented this aspect of life is like really what they were trying to tell me that I had to do and look out for. It was the goal was to get a high value woman, and that shit about high value men too. So those adjectives just feel very superficial. It feels like it's confounded with this idea of fulfillment, that if you have someone that is very attractive, then that means you yourself are also attractive. And yeah, I feel like they're trying to equate your worth to the type of woman that you can attract, which I fully understand, because I disagree with when they present things in that way, is that you should look for a high value woman, because I've dated a couple different women, and I've thought they've all been very attractive, and that's why I was dating them. And I honestly did I still have, this feeling that like the person I want to date, I want them to be so attractive that when I bring them around, like people do look, because for some reason, I don't fully know why, but for some reason, yeah, I feel like the woman that I'm with says something about who I am, because it was part of the social currency growing up. As a teenager, no one really has money, but you know what you could get? You could get a fine ass girl. And if you had a fine ass girl, like, that was something to gain envy and respect from your friends. So maybe that's where that feeling comes from. But I could tell, like, from previous experiences, if there was someone that I felt like had some attraction, or I knew had some attraction to me, and I didn't think that they were attractive, and like conventionally attractive, then I would put up a wall so that that connection couldn't develop, because I wasn't even trying to get to know them. I was just like, I don't think you're pretty, and that was kind of the end of it. Which is, sure, it's fucked up, but I do think a lot of our perception of people does come from how attractive we perceive them. And it's a difficult thing to navigate. It's a difficult thing to get over. Again, I think there's some people who've never, I think that there's some people who that's not in their head, but for me, it's definitely in my head. And I think there's other people that also have that thing in their head that I wish it wasn't so loud in my head, because there are times where, like, I don't want to have to think about, or I don't want to fantasize about smashing every attractive girl that I see, because not everyone is, because I just want a friend sometimes too. It's like, I love all my bros. We have a lot of fun together, but I feel like I tend to be more on the sensitive side, and for me, I feel like some of that stuff is easier to talk through with a woman, because they are more emotional as well, and I think those type of conversations sometimes just go easier with a woman than with a guy. Because I think with a guy too, something I know that I do, when someone's telling me something more emotional, it's like, I don't want to ask a question that I feel like is gonna maybe like just hit a sore spot a little too much. So like, if people are telling me something that's going on, it's like, a lot of times it's hard to dig deeper, because I don't want to put someone in a position where they're thinking about something that they hadn't talked about, and like maybe bringing up emotion that they're not really ready to process. But it's like, if someone's bringing it up, then they want to talk about it, right? But it's for some reason it's difficult to really keep touching about it. But I think with women, they're just more used to like poking and prodding and asking questions. And so, I wish I could get rid of that thought in my head of just like trying to smash every hot girl that I see, because I do want to have like just more platonic relationships with women. But I don't know. I don't know if I can just be friends with women. Honestly, I don't know if I could get rid of that urge in me. And so, yeah, like all these guys are talking about trying to get at these high value women, which really what they're saying is just like hot women, which I guess I think is a fool's errand. Because I have seen it out there sometimes too, when like you could tell like a girl thinks she's like, she knows she's bad and she thinks she's all that. And a lot of times I end up ignoring those girls, because like then it becomes like too much work. Whereas if there's someone else that just is also looking for a good time, not necessarily just trying to like look it out there, but like also just wants to connect with someone, then that makes everything so much easier. And that's kind of where I was able to get to at some point, where talking to different people and whatnot, and like sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, and like I don't think it needs to be difficult. And I think like very hot women sometimes will make it difficult. because they know they got options. And so I think that's I definitely would not be trying to pitch to someone to like look for these high value women. It's like, look for someone that actually is like interested in you and is willing to put in the work, unless you just like always want to be having to think about, you know, about what they want. And there were, you know, that whole space, kind of like the pickup artist space. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing to have to say that that's what I needed to go through to overcome this like mental hurdle that I had in respect to talking with women. But it served its purpose, and you know, I got to give it some credit. And I can make fun of someone trying to find their worth out there and like laugh about having to go to videos to try to find that worth. But if someone, if you know, if these are the types of videos people are going to, or if these videos in any respect have some level of popularity, then that means there's a need out there. And I think that's really what I would like to address, is like, how do I, and how for myself, and how could I help other people, you know, fulfill their desires and feel like they have some worth. Because that's what I think, that's what I see as you're trying to find from like dating really hot women, is like you're trying to find some worth. And I think that's definitely not the place to look. That's not the place where I think I would find worth, is like just having a hot girlfriend. I mean, I think it's probably going to be fun, but at the end of the day, I don't think that's going to make me feel fulfilled. But how do I talk about it so that that's not the thing that guys have to turn to? Because there is a time and a place, you know. I mean, I think it would make me feel, and has made me feel really good when I can pull someone that I think is fucking hot. Like, I want to keep doing it for sure. But what's the reason? That's the thing that makes me feel that. Is it like very simple, and it's just like, we just want hot women? I think it could be that simple, but maybe is there anything else? Is there anything like, are we missing something? I guess, you know, am I missing or what am I missing then? I guess, what am I missing where I'm not feeling, where nothing else in my life is giving me that feeling of worth? How do I break that down, you know? And I ain't really got answers for that, but I think that the question is important to address, because I think as I keep holding on to that feeling of shame, it gets heavier over time. The fact that it continues to be an obstacle changes the magnitude of how I perceive it, you know, because if I continue to hold on to a feeling for a longer period of time, I perceive it as being a bigger feeling. And I think there's something I need to do to try to find a way to shrink it down. And I think a lot of times it's just like getting it outside of my head. When I get it outside of my head, then I think I'm able again I think I'm able to then see it from a new angle, and the magnitude of it, I think, changes. So there's something that I've held on to for a long time, which again, I think it's not even that big, but I have held on to it since I was, what was that, like 7th grade? Since 7th grade, I've never told anyone this, and it's weighed on me for so long, even though I don't really think it's anything. So, you know, there was a lot of people not into some sketchy shit, or just like around sketchy people, and so they get into some sketchy shit. And so I'm this one dude I knew in one of my classes. He ran around with like a certain group of people, kind of more like a clique, not a clique in the sense of like clique back then was like a step down from like a gang. So kind of, I guess, like a crew. So, he's running around with his crew. And so one day, he comes in with an iPhone, and the iPhone's locked. And it's like, back then it was like every time you got that password incorrect, the amount of time you had to wait between inputting the password again, became exponential. So when he showed it to me, it was like a million minutes before you could input the next thing. And so for some reason I was like, oh, let me hold on to it. And this is like the embarrassing part, where it's like, why I haven't told anyone, like, because I was so fucking stupid. Like it's like no neurons were working at this point where when I did this. But so the next period, I was showing it off to my friends, because like, ooh, cool, I have an iPhone, right? Because like back then not everyone had an iPhone, so it was still a little rare. And I didn't know you could jailbreak them either, really. But so I was like, someone's like, oh, what are you gonna do with it? I don't know. It's like, he's like, I'll buy it from you. I was like, in my mind, I thought it was bricked. So I was like, why do you want to buy a bricked iPhone? So I sold it to him for like $20 to $40, like a ridiculous number. It's just like, yeah, I'm that fucking stupid. And he comes back the next day, and it's working because he jailbroke it. And the other dude who gave it to me, he's asking for it. He's like, where is it? I'm just like, oh, I forgot it at home. Trying to buy myself some time. And then the guy that I sold it to obviously doesn't want to sell it back to me. And so now I'm stuck with like, all right, I have no way of getting this phone back. What am I going to do? And it was the end of the year, so I just stopped going to school. I didn't go to school for like the last 7 days of the end of the year. And I feel like I still kind of am on edge sometimes. But I was definitely on edge basically from then until I went out to college. I was on edge that I would run into him, and he would beat me up for taking his phone, which, because it wasn't his phone, it was his friend's phone. And so not only was I worried about beating up, but I mean, he also knew my brother, I think, not like too well, but like they were in the same grade. So I thought maybe he would come up, he would do something to our brother. And so I was worried for a long time that like I would run into him and like something would happen to either me or my family. And I've known that this is just like something I should be able to brush off, but I have so much shame about it that I was that fucking stupid. That I haven't mentioned it to anyone. And there's other things that like that I have in my life, that make me feel that same level of shame. And I don't know. I don't really know what to do about them all the time. And I think, for me, the best way is just to get them out of me. And that's why I've been writing a lot and like doing music and this podcast, because that's, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying people need to go to therapy. I really don't want to send that message, but for me, having some sort of outlet is what I need. The physical stuff I haven't found to be helpful for me. It's like some people really push themselves in the gym, or like have some sort of sport or some sort of active hobby where I guess they, that's their outlet, but that hasn't been the case for me. For me, it's more talking it out, writing it out. But I think that's how I've seen shame affect my life. And yeah, I'm just trying to talk about it because, if trying to add another voice to this internet conversation about things, and hoping just to get another perspective out there, and one that I feel is different, and when I think that is more honest about what's going on. All right, I did want to get to guilt. I guess I'll get to that on the next one because Knicks game's coming on. I want to watch that, so I'll just put on the next one. So catch you guys then.